Hello everyone, so this is Lala and today I am recording my pre-juries tier ranking. So pretty much I'm ranking based off of all the pre-juries in Big Brother USA history and I'm ranking them from worst to best. Obviously, because there technically is no pre-jury in Big Brother 2 and Big Brother 3, they won't be on the list. So I'm going to be ranking Big Brother 4 to Big Brother 25. Let's get right to it. So at dead last, which is 22nd, is unshockingly Big Brother 22. I'm pretty sure that I had this season as dead last on my last pre-jury rankings, but I'm putting this here because the pre-jury started on a dead end, especially with Cody winning the first HOH. And while his plan to take Queso failed, it just led to him changing plans so he could boot Keisha and nominate Kevin as a pawn, with nothing interesting happening at all. Memphis wins the next HOH, and the committee essentially becomes a main alliance, where Nicole Anderson goes home over David, though Devon does not make things easy. Tyler wins HOH and decides to target season 6 by nominating them together, and nothing really came from Janelle and Nicole trash talking one another. Enzo wins HOH and goes after Kaysar, though it doesn't do much in a positive or a negative direction, and I don't remember crap from this week. The final week of the pre-jury is Christmas nominating Devon and Bailey, and they realize that they're in a fake alliance, but the bit of drama that happened in this week was uncomfortable and not entertaining at all. Really, there's nothing positive to come out of this pre-jury. So here it is. So at 21st is Big Brother 23. This season was very similar to the pre-jury of Big Brother 22, where very little actually happened in this portion of the season, and everything was so predictable. I think the only reason why it's higher is that the first week was all over the place due to Frenchie being so inconsistent. At the same time, I didn't even find that to be very exciting, and it all just ends up with the irrelevant bore Travis getting booted. Kylan wins HOH and pretty much kills whatever chances the slaughterhouse has to gain traction, and the cookout becomes a real alliance, with many of them working with the Royal Flush for the next few weeks. Frenchie easily goes home, Xavier sends home Brett with no resistance or interest, and it's the same thing with Christian sending home Whitney with no resistance or interest. What makes this even worse is that the boots were literally planned a week and a half before the evictions actually took place, and who was getting nominated with them. The only somewhat interesting week after this was the final week where Derek decides to backdoor Christian, and the latter actually campaigned, where literally none of the other nominees in the pre-jury did that, outside of maybe Alyssa in the first week. So there was a bit of intrigue there. At the same time, that week being the height of the season's pre-jury would be one of the weaker weeks in most pre-juries, hence this season being so low. At 20th is Big Brother 21. This was well on its way to being the worst pre-jury ranked on this list, but it was spared from one tick at the very end of it. The season started with Grateful being being the alliance running things, and Christy winning HOH, where it seemed like she changed her target so much. Anyways, she was forced to send home Ovi since she didn't want the optics of sending home Cammy, and this group was just so unlikable, and nothing really happened at this point. The comeback twist took place here, and it was told to the house guests, where it ensured that not only the easy moves were be made for the next few weeks in the house, like Jack sending home Kemi, which honestly would have happened anyways, and Nick not targeting Jack like he initially wanted to, but it caused an awkward dynamic with the Jacks telling everyone not to speak to the evicted house guests, and it just did not look good optically. Even the house flipping to boot Cliff over Nicole really didn't add much excitement, since Isabella was getting backstabbed was the most foreshadowing thing ever. The final week at the pre-jury had Holly winning HOH, and her attempt to send Nick home failed. And when Catherine suggested to go up to get more camera time, the majority alliance blew up, mainly at the behest of Jackson and Christie's conflict, and that led to arguably the most tense vote in Big Brother history, and that huge fight which took hours to complete, though it did end up with Sam getting booted, which was pretty predictable. Literally, the last few hours of this portion saved the season from being last in this category. At 19th place is Big Brother 19. This pre-jury is mainly saved by the first week of the season, though it still had the crappy day one twist that caused Cameron to be booted and Paul to be protected, essentially. Cody has his alliance set in a row, and after an expulsion, or Meg leaving technically, it wasn't an expulsion, he is ready to backdoor Paul, who everyone thinks is in their alliance. After the Pendant of Protection is used, Christmas, another ally, is nominated and the house turns on himself and Jessica, and there's a lot of fighting taking place. Unfortunately, any of the excitement at this portion of the season had went out the window, with everyone throwing their HOH to Paul so Cody can be backdoored. And then Alex wins HOH to join Paul's cult and was directed to boot Dominique, which had a lot of ugliness to it. Jessica has her halting hex, she wins HOH, and Cody wins the battle back, and you would think that something interesting would happen. Also, she won the veto this week too. I knew she would screw it up before she did, and it led to the Pawn Ramses, one of the only people not working with Paul, going home over Josh. The next 2 weeks were a drag to watch, as the cult was going to do anything to get the showmans out, and even after the halting hex is used, which the house thought was false, and this was arguably the most toxic week in Big Brother history, Jessica sealed her fate with a new twist being introduced and going home on Josh's HOH. The drama never stopped, but you couldn't really get into it, since it was almost never one-on-one, and a lot of the fights were the same fights over and over and over again, and a few of them were premeditated too. At 18th is Big Brother 16. A part of me is shocked that the season is this high, but a part of me really isn't, since it's clear that it's only here because of 1 week. The first week really wasn't notable, as Caleb ends up being the sole HOH and they plan to target Donnie, but he won the veto. Joey ended up shooting herself in the foot and goes home. Devin ends up being the sole HOH in the second week, and it's so chaotic, with him coming up with all these plans to send Brittany home, which his alliance didn't even want, and then him being convinced to spare her after one conversation, and then target his own ally, Zach, which is hilarious, especially with how it all blew up, with Paola, his pawn, going home. Unfortunately, everything after this sucks. The misogyny becomes more rampant, Battle of the Block really takes up the excitement of the season, and we have predictable Devin, Brittany, and Amber boots. Zack and Frankie's tryhard antics get old, and then Caleb's entire being revolted me, especially around his interactions with Amber. And you could even see how the awkwardness between Cody and Brittany caused her to go home as well. 4 dead weeks caused it to be on here regarding the list. At 17th is Big Brother 13. This season is all over the place regarding the pre-jury, but I'm definitely leaning more negative than even being mixed on it, hence its placement here. Rachel wins the first HOH and decides to target Keith because she wants to give Push a key, and Keith made it known that he was targeting all the veterans. While it was a close vote, it really wasn't interesting since we all knew that the veterans would win this one out. Jordan tried to get Dominic during her HOH in the next week, then she had no choice but to send home Cassie when he won the veto, where Cassie got into a few tips with Brenshaw, but this week was kinda overall. Things started to get interesting in the third week with Danielle trying to get Rachel to backdoor Jeff, and it blows up on her, Clea, and Dominic's faces, where it causes that huge fight, and the lines are officially drawn. Essentially, it is everyone against Danielle and Clea, and what made it fun, at least on paper, is that they won the next 2 HOHs. I say on paper because the entitlements from the other 2 showmances were unbearable in how they treated the other people, and then Clea's HOH was halted due to that stupid returning twist and Lawan sending himself home. At 16th is Big Brother 12. With this season, it follows a lot of the formats that are the majority Alliance Steamroll seasons had. If anything, this season pioneered it. But what makes it a bit more interesting is that the HOHs were a majority of the Brigade members winning it. Hayden won the first HOH and made the easy move in nominating the showmans, but when Brenshaw won the veto, production pushed a bit too hard to not get any nominated, and most of the house thought that she was the saboteur, so she meltdowned herself out of the house. Rachel won the next HOH, and she did the most to get Monet out, where they had a few arguments, which led to a house meeting, which did not go in Brenshaw's favor. Matt wins HOH and decides to target Kathy initially, though changes his mind to backdoor Brennan, which fails because Brennan wins the veto and doesn't use it. Andrew tries to separate himself from the Shermans, but people see through it and he loses his mind on Kristen a few times, which was fun. Then there was the huge fight after Rachel won her second HOH, but the week in itself was pretty boring, and it's frustrating to see the underdogs waste their position in power so many times, where it still feels like a steamroll in general. So at 15th is Big Brother 25. I have never been the one to think that the pre-jury was good, even in the first few weeks of the season. I found the first 2 weeks to be very boring, as Rolly had the easiest HOH, but she still managed to screw it up in a pretty boring way. Hissam was so obsessed with getting Riley Alley out. Did I just say Riley Alley? Anyways, who cares? And I wasn't interested in the almost flip that happened. Then Felicia stupidly targeted Hassam, which could have been fun, but no drama even came from that. Cameron targeted Jag with his HOH, and then the twist caused the HOH to not matter, and even that was a bore. I only got interested during Jared's HOH, where he started getting into it with Corey and America, and you saw things with the Bye Bye Bitches starts to get a bit weaker. And then the best week of the season was Cameron's second HOH, where he shocked the entire house with nominating Izzy and Felicia, and then the other side finally realizing the power structure due to Jared being a hot mess, and then flipping the votes on Izzy. Jared wins HOH again, and not a whole lot happens here, as Cameron easily goes home and Jared follows him in the double, only for the double to be fake. We wasted an entire week where absolutely nothing happens, and this cast isn't interesting enough, Big Brother 2, to handle a week where nothing happens. And Cameron wins his final HOH, where he teams up with Matt and Jag, and it seems like Felicia is going calm since Cameron doesn't want her in the jury, and she is picking fights. But the house flips to boot me home. The pre-jury is just way too long, and it's one of the reasons why it is so low, outside of many of those weeks being boring. At 14th is Big Brother 9. The main issue that I have with the season is that overall, the pre-jury is just way too convoluted, as there is a bunch of twists in this portion of the season, and it more often deterred instead of added to the show. The first week had the power couple, since everyone is in pairs, and then the normal HOH, where Jen and Parker ruin their power, despite booting Jacob and Sharon. Then their allies, Alex and Amanda, win HOH, but they blow it up because Jen decided to tell the entire house that she and Ryan knew one another, so they were nominated with their partners. This week felt like an entire month, and so much has happened where it's exhausting, and I can't even get into it here. Anyways, James and Chelsea wins HOH and targets Amanda and Alex, where there was an almost flip to boot Matt and Ellie, but there wasn't much happening in this week. Joshua and Sharon win HOH and target Allison and Ryan because she screwed them over with the last vote, and there were a lot of fights with Joshua and Allison. They finally decided to end the pairs twist, and seeing the gameplay and dynamics change with all of them being single was great, with the sides officiating and Matt almost getting backdoored before Sheila flipped the game to get James out, which caused a bunch of drama. I think the pre-jury ended pretty well, but the first few weeks was a bit too much. At 13th is Big Brother 8. I don't have a whole lot to say that's in the positive or negatives regarding the pre-jury of the season, which is why it's roughly around the middle. The first week really wasn't that notable, with Kale winning HOH and her Four Horsemen Alliance deciding to nominate Carol and Amber, and the House sent the former home due to being an outsider and her wanting to leave. Jen wins a shocking HOH and decides to target the two people she did not like, which are the Donatos, but the entire house turned against her, but she was able to send home Joe, and the Mr. and Mrs. Robinson's alliance was exposed. Kale and Jen were nominated for the remaining 3 weeks of the pre-jury HOHs by both Donatos and Dustin, and despite them being outsiders, there was always another opportunity presented to them regarding making it through another week. Mike pissed off Dick during the veto competition, causing Kim to be sent home. Nick was always the backdoor target in the next week, and Eric was the backdoor target in the final week. But that one failed, causing Kale to finally go home. The America's Player twist caused a lot of the drama since it forced Eric to give 2 rogue votes, which he wouldn't have done had he had his own agency, which played a big part in the strategy. There was a lot of drama, but a lot of it was predictable, overall causing displacement for the season. At 12th is Big Brother 7. If I remember correctly, I had this pre-jury a lot lower on my last list, and while I might have grown a bit more fond of it this time, my opinion of it really has not changed, since I do think it's the weaker element of the season and weaker than a lot of other pre-juries. We start off with the dual HOH twist with Jace and Janelle winning, and due to Danielle and Allison overplaying, they found themselves on the block. There was some back and forth about who to boot, and things tipped over against Allison last minute. The network has Kesar winning HOH, and he nominates Diane and Nokomis, where nothing really interesting happens in the week, and the house ends up booting Nokomis, even though some of the season 6 wanted otherwise. James wins HOH and continues the season 6 reign, and he's obsessed with booting Chicken George since he pre-gamed with damn near everyone else. But his worst case scenario happened with his targets winning the veto, and and he's pressured by his alliance to turn on Jace, which caused a lot of drama, especially with Marcellus. Janelle is finally able to get Diane out, though she did it in a way that pissed off her alliance and all of the house. And then Daniel wins HOH to finally break the season 6 streak, aligns with the Legion of Doom, and then Kesa gets booted after Janelle saved herself with the veto, though making a ridiculous risk with nominating James. Overall, it isn't a bad pre-jury, but just mediocre at best all around, and the steamroll for most of it did not help it either. At 11th is Big Brother 15. The season is definitely one that had a mix at best pre-jury, as there are a lot of exciting things with it, and some of the grossest crap I've ever seen as well. The first week had the moving company forming, and it was made to seem like we would have another brigade situation, but they decided to get rid of David by using the MVP twist, though there was a flip vote that some of the people did not expect. Aaron wins HOH and is going to get revenge for them booting her potential showman's partner and nominating Alyssa against her closest ally, Helen. Most of the House weaponized Alyssa to take a shot at Jeremy, and when that failed, they sent Nick home in yet another close vote. All the racism that was happening definitely took me out of the season, and was very disgusting to watch, since it was normalized in the House, and it definitely seeped into the gameplay. Helen won HOH and backdoored Jeremy with no ease. It probably would have been Howard nominated if it wasn't for the optics, and then Jed wins HOH to boot Caitlyn, though there was a bit of a back and forth with who to boot out of her and Aaron, though the latter made a deal with Helen, which saved her. Aaron then wins HOH and does the house's dirty work in nominating Howard and Spencer together and Candace to replace Spencer. And this week was just dire with everything that was happening around this time and certain allegations that were made. The pre-jury started out pretty strong and then it progressively got worse, hence its placement. At 10th is Big Brother 14. I'm actually pretty shocked that the pre-jury of this season is this high, especially since it's a longer one, and I usually punish pre-juries that are long because they are dragged out. The day one twist really sucked overall, but the first week otherwise was very interesting. Willie was a chaotic HOH, the vote between Frankie and Carl went back and forth until the very last minute, and then there's the fight with Frank and Willie and Boogie too. Frank went to HOH, and right as he was about to get his revenge, Willie gets DQ'd for getting physical with Joe. Things come down after this, and JoJo, the third target, ended up going home because Shane ended up getting the veto and he was the second target. Shane wins the next HOH, and this is where the two duos, him and Danielle and Brittany and Dan, win or they get together as an alliance, and I don't remember much about this week. The coaches twist finally ends, and we definitely see the conflict between Bookie and Janelle coming to blows, and they cannot get together, causing Janelle to get booted. Frank wins HOH and then gets duped by what was becoming the majority alliance by being brought into a fake alliance, causing Frank to not to get Dan, but Will instead. Shane went to HOH and is told by his alliance to turn on Frank and Boogie, so the two unleashed a bunch of smoke when they were nominated together, which was pretty fun, and seeing Ian being the one to put the final nail in Boogie's coffin was cool. Overall, the pre-jury in general was just okay, hence it being here. So at ninth place is Big Brother 18. Looking back, this was another pre-jury that was just kind of okay in the grand scheme of things. Of course, there was the stupid day one or two boots, which always sucks, and with the way the competition was set up, it almost encouraged a veteran becoming the first HOH in a weird way. Nicole is in power, and of course the veterans and siblings of the veterans and superfans joined them. And while the result of Josiah going was predictable, there was a lot of fun moments in the week with Jose's delusions. Polly wins power, and the week was very boring and predictable, and foretold Victor's back door like no other. But we did see the majority alliance start crumbling at this point, especially Frank and Tiffany. Bridget wins power and it becomes Frank's HOH essentially, where she nominates Tiffany and Paul, and he nominates her closest ally, Bronte, with the power he won. Bronte ends up going home because his alliance hates him, though there might have been production influence with this. The aftermath of this was great, with Tiffany melting down and Devon trying to fight off all the lies she told Frank and Tiffany, and the hilarity of it all. Polly wins his second consecutive HOH and is insistent on booting Tiffany, who gets into some drama with him and Devon during her final week. Victor comes back into the house, and James essentially does here what he did at this point last season. Once HOH makes a promise to protect people in front of the house, only to nominate them, Bridget and Frank here. With both nominees getting into a few squabbles with Paul and Michelle before Frank is finally booted, as he was safe for the last 3 weeks beforehand due to who won HOH. A decent amount of fun moments here, but there's some weaker weeks as well. At 8 is Big Brother 17. For a season that had the Battle of the Block twist for all but 1 week of the pre-jury, they made it quite interesting, though I think it had more to do with the personalities of the cast than anything else. The first week involved James remaining in power, and it didn't matter since the other HH option in Jason would have backdoored Jace as well. Anyways, the backdoor goes through very smoothly, which causes Jace to lash out at people a few times, and then Audrey blew up her entire game, and Devon also blew up her game by arguing with Clay and being a part of the Audrey mess. The second week isn't nearly as interesting, though seeing Shirley try to slightly cut Devon was something, though it did lead to the formation of the Sixth Sense Alliance and the twin twist being exposed. Vanessa gains power in the next week and is going back and forth about whether she should target James or Jeff, so her squad comes up with a bunch of quote unquote reasons to set Jeff up, and it was all pretty entertaining, and Austin doing whatever he could to get his way. Shelley was going to target Jason with her second HOH, but then realized that Audrey was not worth saving, and Audrey had a very interesting meltdown, and of course we saw her arguing with Clay quite a bit. Vanessa is setting up for an Austin backdoor after the Dark Moon alliance that was being proposed, but her alliance got her to change her mind, and then the blowback of sending Jason home finally woke that side of the house up. Battle of the Block finally ends, and we have James winning HOH, where he nominates Shelley and Clay, despite promising to keep them safe in front of everyone at the HOH camp. Of course, we saw a lot of tears and a lot of fighting, even a few hours before eviction with James and Clay. Overall, it's really fun, despite it being a steamroll for a decent amount of the pre-jury. At seventh is Big Brother 11. This one definitely benefited as pre-jury because it is a relatively short one compared to most of the others, and I think it works out for the best. When you look at it, it really doesn't seem very interesting on paper since it was mainly one side dominating in the pre-jury, but there's a sense of things crumbling at the end of it. Because of how the twist was set up, Jesse became the first HOH once he entered the season, and the Brains Plus athlete Sans Jeff decided to team up, and the others became the other side, where the drama split up the house even more, causing a tiebreaker route to boot Brayden. Ronnie was set up so well in the middle, but he chose his side by nominating Jeff, Laura, and then later Jordan throughout his HOH reign, and seeing Ronnie get caught and exposed was such a great moment in the season, though he of course just hid. Jesse ends up in power again, and this week is easily the most boring of the pre-jury, since he penned a backdoor of Casey, who ended up playing in veto, and it went south. And actually, no, it didn't go south. It went very smoothly, sailing with absolutely no resistance, though he did tell Natalie and Jesse off after being evicted. The final week of the pre-jury finally had the Jesse group starting to fall apart, as Russell decided to target Ronnie, and his allies turned on him for Ronnie, though Russell started working on getting closer to Jeff, who he's been feuding with throughout the season. And then we had the huge feud between Chima and Russell, and Michelle's involvement in it as well. Overall, it's a small but eventful pre-jury, mainly just due to the cast. At 6 is Big Brother 24. I don't know about putting this season this high pretending it's pre-jury, so I might end up changing its placement when it's all said and done. Anyways, the pre-jury of the season actually started out very poorly, as there's just everyone trash talking Taylor behind her back, and then there was that stupid twist in the first week of the season. Danielle was HOH and wasn't even in power, though he thought he was so liked in the house, and a twist as well as Paloma's quit prevented our winner from being the first boot. Jasmine wins power and is convinced by Amir to send home Pooch, who nominated himself as a pawn, and he ended up going home. The next week is easily one of the more exciting weeks on a strategic level, especially with the twists encouraging the more predictable gameplay on a strategic level. Especially with the twists encouraging more predictable gameplay that happened. Or in general, that twist like this usually encourages more predictable gameplay. So the drama with Danielle, Nicole, and Taylor sucked, but Kyle and Monty flipping on their own alliance and literally getting everyone not in the alliance with Joseph's help, and Amira as well as her allies getting blindsided was brilliant. The following week had Monty in power and he set on targeting Nicole, but after Cal throwing Alyssa under the bus, that changed only for Cal to get cold feet when his alliance wanted to send Alyssa home at the behest of him. Daniel wins veto and is literally told that his best ally and friend Nicole will go home if he uses it, but he does it anyways and is shocked that Nicole ends up getting evicted. The final week at the pre-jury was okay enough. Daniel and Mati got into that fight, and we did see the house plot about Mati, but it didn't lead to much. A poor start, but I think it held up decently enough by the end. At fifth is Big Brother 6. For a season that has a longer pre-jury, this one definitely is the best in my opinion. That is a longer pre-jury. And what's even more interesting is that this season, hence the pre-jury, started in a very bad position with a boring, uneventful, and unmemorable first week, leading to the forgettable Ashlia getting booted. Things started getting divided and a bit more interesting in the next week, with the mess with Michael and Eric, as well as Kaiser and Yvette, though there was nastiness there, and the friendship side started to form around here, which put Eric in the middle. Casey got his lick back for Michael's eviction with forming a counter-alliance of the Southern Six and creating this plan to boot Eric, and the blind side after the video competition was brilliant television. Things definitely calmed down in the next week, with Maggie getting her lick back for Eric's eviction by nominating James and K-Star, and James swears on the Bible and gets some heat from the friendship for joining the other side. Howie went HOH, and instead of taking the shot at the other side, he targets James and Sarah, where they are of course upset, but the couple gets a lot of wrath from both sides, and we see the start of the tension between April and Yvette here. Do I even need to say anything about the final week of the pre-jury? Kaysar comes back and almost wins HOH, but gives it to Jennifer under a list of stipulations, where she breaks every single one, ultimately ending with her sending him home, where the Souths brought hell onto Earth. Definitely up there with being one of the most tense and most iconic weeks in Big Brother history, and ended this portion of the season on a very strong note. At fourth place is Big Brother 4. I think people are shocked that the pre-jury of this season is this high, and I don't hear many people talking about the pre-jury in general. One of the reasons why it is so high on this list is that the pre-jury is actually the shortest in Big Brother history, and this is the first one, though it is clear that it was done because of Scott's expulsion threw things off. Mason wins power, and the house is split up by the Eight and the Stooges, as the other women exes weren't really a part of an alliance, and Amanda was an easy person to get rid of, though seeing some of the dynamics with the exes is pretty interesting to watch, and Scott's downfall and drama gave us something to talk about. She goes from being on the block to being HOH, and he wants to get rid of Erica, making an awful speech to her, and she throws a racist slur about him, which was shady. Anyways, the Eight decides to pull off a blindside and were even ready to get Dana out of there, but when G refused, they blindsided Michelle out of the house, and her reaction is one of the best blindside reactions ever. And then the wildcard Dana won HOH and gave us the best week of the season, where she rightfully flipped on her alliance and pulled June in with her to align with the Stooges, so it's essentially 5-5. She nominates Allison and Jack for eviction, and she engages in some drama with Allison due to their history with Justin. Allison showmans Nathan wins the veto and pisses off everyone, his allies and enemies, by taking Allison off the block. Some words were exchanged with Dana, and David was the sacrificial lamb. The pre-jury was short, but gave us enough material to be very satisfied. The bronze prize of third place goes to Big Brother 5. When the word iconic comes up and you think about pre-juries, Big Brother 5 is definitely up there, and it's the second pre-jury in existence. Jace won the first HOH and set up his Four Horsemen alliance quickly, where Mike consistently talked about targeting the people in the alliance and attempting to make alliances with everyone else, but people in the alliance. He got into it with Scott and Jace a few times before his departure, but it was a very predictable week. Marvin wins HOH, and of course the Four Horsemen suck up to him and make a fake alliance with him, and Marvin decides to target Lori. Despite that, damn near the entire house planned to vote out the other nominee in Holly, but Jace had enough smarts to realize that she was in danger, so he took Holly off the block with his veto, and it sealed Lori's fate. Though there was also some more Jace drama that happened this week, and Scott and Diane also get into it. June wins HOH, and when you think it will be a week where the Force Horsemen take over to dominate, the results are actually very different. He nominates Holly amongst Nakomes and get a lot of smoke from his alliance for this move. But after the huge blow up with Diane, Jace, and Holly, as well as Scott getting jealous, the entire house sans Jace is fine with booting her, and Jace is on the outs with his entire alliance. Diane wins HOH after a long battle with Jace, and she of course nominates him with Scott, though her plan fails when he wins the veto and there's a close vote between Scott and Marvin, but ultimately Scott gets evicted. Jace picks on Adria, and Marvin tells him off before Natalie enters the house as a house guest, and he realizes that he is a goner after Nokomis wins HOH. But the six finger plan took place, and he was shocked that he was safe for a bit before the iconic moment happened. And of course, he fought with Drew and Diane before he left. It's definitely the creme de la creme of the pre-jury in general, looking at all of them. And it still holds the standard 20 years later. The silver prize of second goes to Big Brother 10. I never thought that a season would take over this season when it comes to the pre-jury, since this pre-jury is arguably the most iconic one of them all. Right from the very first night, there was stuff happening, with Jesse and Rennie getting into it over her noises, and this continued even after they were nominated together. Right when it seemed like Brang was going to steamroll Jerry's HOH, April and Libra caught onto Ollie and then aligning with him, and they completely flipped things where they got most of the house to pressure Jerry into nominating Brang to go home. After that, Jesse wins power and he easily targets Steven with Den as a pawn. A lot of people are annoyed with Libra, which we see in her argument with Keisha, who argued with April a bit back. Jerry and Rennie about the slow arm comment. Keisha wins HOH, and she is not going to do what the 8 wants her to do, and she's targeting Angie for abandoning Steven and letting her get flack for it, which pissed off Jesse especially, and he gets into it with Keisha several times because she does not want to target Libra. He, Memphis, Michelle, and Angie come up with Bannergate to get Libra targeted, but it backfires and it ends up with Jerry calling Memphis a womanizer, which has since aged very well. The final week of the pre-jury involves April winning power, and she is targeting Memphis, with Jesse as a pawn. April pissed off Libra and Keisha before the veto competition, which started a whirlwind effect, which led to the huge birthday fight with Jesse that involved almost the entire house, and it caused them to align with Memphis, Dan, and Rennie to take out Jesse instead of Memphis. Something was always happening in this pre-jury, and it was a short one, too. And of course, first place in this category goes to Big Brother 20. When it came to ranking this list, this season stood out to me more than anything else. And it really isn't much of a surprise that it's first here. Tyler wins power and the house is immediately divided, which he uses to his advantage, especially when the other side thinks that he's a free agent. He decides to target Steve, but intentionally keeps the vote split, so the other side could be in a weaker position, and after realizing that Sam has a power up, Caitlyn ends up winning the next HOH after she flipped on her own alliance due to being jealous of Haley and Fessel, and is then convinced by Taylor to backdoor Swiggy, which was amazing to watch with how dumb she is overall. The next week had Scotty winning HOH, and he decided to target the bros Winston and Brett, and there was a lot of drama that came from this week, as he caught some heat for his nominations. Brett and Caitlyn, my bad, went back and forth for a bit, and he set it up for Rockstar to go at him, where the vote was another split vote, and he set it up very well, with Winston storming out of the house and Rockstar laying into him right after the eviction. Samantha wins HOH, which was random, and then nominates Haley and Caitlyn by thinking that they are the opposite of feminists and gives a slut-shaming nomination speech. There's a bunch of drama with Caitlyn and Fessel that does get exhausting after a while, and Samantha is not here for Caitlyn whatsoever, where JC led the charge to boot Caitlyn once and for all. And then the final week of the pre-jury has Bailey having arguably the biggest case of HOH-itis ever. Bailey snapped on allies like Scotty and Faisal a few times during her HOH, and Haley also joins in with the Fessy fighting, and Bailey reveals her power up to Rachel, who tells her allies, and they plan to blindside Rachel because of her being too emotional, and she gives us the best reaction to a blindside ever. So much gold in this season, and there's no other choice for me pertaining a first place choice. So that concludes my ranking of the Big Brother pre-juries, and this one was definitely an interesting one to look back on. So I have the juries video list, I have the endgamers list, and then I have the overall seasons list, which I'm going to use all the categories and create a median based on the categories per season, and that's how I'll determine how the season rankings go. And then I have to post the Big Brother House Guest Player rankings. That should be out pretty soon. I just wanted to thank you all for getting me to 6K subscribers. I honestly never thought that it would happen and I would ever get that much support. And I also want to announce that I do have another channel where a lot of my compilation videos from the past, present, and future are going to go. It is Alal, which is essentially Lala backwards. And I'm definitely looking forward to more videos on both channels. I hope you all are doing well, and I'll be back with something soon. Take care.